What's going on, everybody? It's your buddy, it's your pal Spaz Phoenix, the YWC Reality Check, and it's a pretty damn good time to be a wrestling fan. No, I'm not going to do the cliche thing, even though I just did it. We are jumping, feet first, into the Triple H era, as everybody's calling it, of WWE. Vince is gone. Most of the weirdos are celebrating. Triple H is taking over. Stephanie's taken over. And it's one of those definitely let's see how it goes scenarios. Now, as I've said in other videos, other podcasts, etc., Vince got screwed. That is a thing that happened. My offer to Linda McMahon, if she wants to put me in a similar terrible situation, is absolutely still out there, because I would love $12 million. That would be great. The other side of it is Triple H and Stephanie is better for WWE than Vince, even though I don't like the way Vince was outed. So I figured, give it some time, give it, a little bit of room to breathe. We can talk about it, because we had a Raw and a SmackDown and a pay-per-view that were all still sort of created in the, what do you want to say, the Vince McMahon image, the Vince McMahon mold. Everything was sort of set in place. So we had a Raw that was kind of already set in place. You had a SmackDown that was kind of already set in place. You had a pay-per-view that was largely set in place. But then all the rats on the wheels started getting the dirt sheets going and saying Triple H is going to start his era with a bang. He's going to do SummerSlam with a splash, etc., etc., etc. So what I'm going to kind of do, this isn't meant to be a SummerSlam review, even though I think SummerSlam was pretty damn good. I'm going to use SummerSlam as sort of the template to talk about what's happened since SummerSlam. We've had SummerSlam, we've had one full Raw, one full SmackDown, and a lot of reasons to look forward to this coming Monday. Hopefully I'm going to get this recording out tonight. Hopefully this is going to hit your feeds Monday morning. So a lot of this is speculation as to what's going to happen this coming Monday on Raw. But let's talk about SummerSlam. SummerSlam's it was a great show. Big stadium feel. The small entranceway in the big stadium is always a really cool thing, because it means that the background isn't a big entranceway. The background is the fans itself, which is always kind of cool. And it looks like everybody that was there had a pretty good time. And then you get all the people that are like, oh, this is the side of the arena you didn't see. Look, there's gaps. Okay. Yes, I see your All Elite t-shirt. You can go over here. Now, I should say right off the bat, I'm sort of doing this off the top of my head. I've got a couple of notes in front of me, but I'm sort of spitballing off the top of my head. So if it's all over the place, you're going to have to forgive me. This pod, and I might do another one in like 2 weeks and see where we're at. So we'll see how that goes. It's not in any way meant to bring fans over from AEW. It's not meant to bring fans over from New Japan. It's not meant to all of a sudden say, there's all these, big Band-Aids that have been put on WWE and it's perfect again. But we've done a lot in about 2 weeks' time, if that makes sense. We've done a lot more than I think a lot of people were saying in a 2 week span. There's people, and technically it wasn't presented by Sidgwick, but it was very Sidgwick vibes. Immediately there was a video up from our friends at What Culture. I like most of the guys at What Culture, but it was the headline was why you shouldn't get your hopes up about Triple H, and it's like, it's been a week and a half and you want to shoot the guy in the foot already. And it's like, oh, he's trained by Vince, he's going to do all the same things. And it's like, yeah, except they fought about NXT, and they fought about the NXT stars being on the main roster because Triple H pushed against Vince. So it is what it is. So no, I'm not telling you all of a sudden that WWE is the promised land for fans or wrestlers, but, the latter we're going to talk about. I am saying we're not where we were 2 weeks ago. And now that's mostly because all the SJWs on Twitter are jerking off at the fact that they cost Vince McMahon a job. But that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about SummerSlam. SummerSlam had nothing on the kickoff. So that's, the kickoff's always kind of useless when there's no matches on it. There's a whole lot of video packages. What kills me about the kickoff is all the video packages and all the build-up that you see again before the matches anyway. So makes you wonder why they do the kickoff. The kickoff is part of the show, so just put a match or two on the show, it will be absolutely fun. You could do some number one contender, like, if you wanted to. I'm just saying, if there was a story where more than one contender was in contention for a title, you could book the number one contenders match on the kickoff. You could book the match proper on the card proper. You know, give 3 people exposure instead of 2, etc. But we started off with Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch. Now, I've done a lot about the absence of Sasha Banks and Naomi. And the other person that I thought was just as bad as them and getting a push just as bad as them and getting John Cena just as much as them is Bianca Belair, mostly because she was getting the John Cena push that nobody wanted to admit, but also because the gimmick was really stupid and the hair gimmick is also pretty fucking stupid. They're pulling all that shit back. She's athletic as hell. Let's focus on that instead. Becky made her look like $1,000,000 when you hear that Becky also absolutely destroyed her shoulder at the beginning of the match and still went to the end. Becky Lynch is a fucking beast. And they finished the saga. This is what kills me. This is what kills me. And this is where I think the new regime is trying to smooth over like people that colored outside the lines in the old regime. They finished the Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair saga. She finally got her revenge. She finally got her closure for the crime that was committed on her at SummerSlam last year. Let me reiterate once again, the crime that was committed against her was Becky Lynch came down, assaulted the person that she was supposed to face, and challenged her face to face. That challenge was accepted face to face, and Becky Lynch beat her in about 20 seconds by outsmarting her face to face. There's no saga there, but now they've morphed it into a saga because they're like, okay, if we make the rest of it good, you guys will believe the first part again, which I don't think is the greatest thing in the world. I'm not gonna lie, but they managed to make something out of nothing. And I mean, Belair's a great athlete and Becky Lynch is a star. So you're not going to have a bad time there. Becky Lynch turning face at the end with the handshake and the hug and all that kind of thing was really cool. You could already see her like sort of, we didn't know at the time that she had completely separated her shoulder until some of those photos came out later on that were absolutely terrible. But you could tell that she was at least carrying something with her arm, carrying some kind of injury. They have the hug and whatever, and then it happens. What we've been waiting for. What we've been waiting for forever and ever and ever. The Bayley music happens, and it tells you a couple of things right away. A, Bayley's back, and B, heel Bayley is back. Beautiful, because what was one of the most picked apart feuds of the no crowd Thunderdome CWC era was the Belair versus Bayley thing, because they did all the things with all the Trons because there was no people there and the laughing heads all over the place that was admittedly a bit strange. I like that this is where they brought her back because she's looking at Bianca Belair, who has that title, as if to say, what did you forget about me? Which is brilliant. Super cool moment to open the show. Now, do we leave it at one moment? We went a little AEW here. You know, bring out Adam Cole. Adam Cole, you know, debuts in AEW to spoil, or to wrap up the show, I should say. And let's double down on that with Bryan Danielson, which admittedly was a cool moment, which admittedly, back then, when I was still watching NXT, when NXT was still good, I was sat there at that pay-per-view and I was like, well, we're kind of fucked, aren't we? So that's kind of cool, right? So what do? We not only have Bayley, we have Bayley come halfway down the ramp, we look up the ramp, and the recently released, now returning Dakota Kai comes out. Now, anybody that followed me when I did do coverage on NXT, when it was good, etc., 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 I love Dakota Kai. I think I loved her in NXT, even though I think they could have done way more with her in NXT. And then you go one more time back up the rampway, and you get another familiar bit of music from somebody that wasn't really let go, but we just haven't seen in a while because I haven't watched NXT because NXT's fucking terrible. And that's Io Shirai. Now, Corey Graves on commentary immediately calls her Io Sky because that was probably in his notes and whatever, and somebody else messes up and calls her Io Shirai, and the Tron still says Io Shirai, so the people that want to nitpick WWE, oh, they fucked up the Tron, this whole thing is bad. No, it's not. It's absolutely fine. Apparently all this was done on short notice, so yeah, they didn't whip up a Titantron in 5 minutes. Sorry about your fucking luck. They did call her Io Sky. They have renamed her Io Sky, which does go with the WWE's old pattern of renaming stars and that kind of thing. And if you want to say that that's a sign of old things, a sign of old patterns, old habits, etc. I will say that Io Shirai to Io Sky is a lot more palatable than the Bruiserweight Pete Dunne to Butch or Gunther or Ludwig Kaiser, etc., etc., etc. This was fucking gold. This was absolutely great because, like I said, AEW had a very, very cool moment. Not taking anything away from AEW, but they doubled down and gave you Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson in the same night. They gave you 3 very different stories here because they tripled down. They gave you back somebody that we've been, you know, talking about for a while, who's been on the injured list for a while, so that's a happy return. They bring you back somebody who was let go from the company and sent everybody into an absolutely, like, fake rage nightmare on social media in Dakota Kai. So that's a happy story. And you've got somebody who was sort of wandering lost on NXT without really anything to do, so let's bring her up and make her part of this cool thing as well. Those are 3 very unique, cool stories that they all brought together in one moment, and they square up to Bianca Belair, and the newly face-turned Becky Lynch now sidles up to Bianca Belair in her new babyface role, solidifying her role as a babyface, staring down the 3 heels as they leave. Now, I'm glad they didn't have to do any more than that because Bianca Belair's shoulder was fucked, as we know. Now, moving on to Raw, etc., there was like this big thing of like, okay, Becky Lynch came out, talked about her injury, said she's going to be gone for a while, handed the torch over to Bianca Belair, which I think is really cool and not enough people are talking about. Both times that Becky Lynch has had to leave, she's handed the torch to somebody else. Here, carry the division. When she went off to be a mother, she handed it off to Asuka. Now that she's going off to deal with her injured shoulder, she's handed that off to Bianca Belair after having this, you know, quote-unquote saga with her, which is a very, very cool touch, and we don't see enough of that. It's like, oh, I'm going to be back, you know, you watch out, when I come back, I'll be better than ever, but no, you know, hold it down while I'm gone. Very, very cool moment. And WWE solved one of my problems immediately, and it's like, oh Christ, there's a group of 3, and there's one person by themselves, and there's 2 people that everybody wants back, and oh my god, the division can't survive without these 2, and I'm not even going to name them because they're not worth it. But we didn't do that. What we did instead was we rewarded people that actually show up to work. We brought in Alexa Bliss and Asuka because they had a match later on Raw. It was one of those, it wasn't officially a number 1 contenders match, but it was hey, here's 2 people that don't really have a direction right now, and they both want to climb up the ranks, so to speak, towards the title. Let's go out and have a babyface versus babyface exhibition, and we'll see where it goes from there, because one of them wants the dreaded M, the momentum, towards the championship currently on the shoulder of Bianca Belair, and they're obviously interrupted by Bayley and her new faction. People keep wanting to say Bayley and her buddies because of the balloon things from back in the day. I really hope that doesn't get overused. Now they take out Asuka, and they take out Alexa Bliss. That's it. I'm trying to keep my name straight here because my notes are minimal. And Bianca Belair comes out for the save. This is after Bianca Belair saw them take out an already injured Becky Lynch in the back, and we get Io Shirai set up for Io Sky set up for a match later on in the night with Bianca Belair, which of course has interference, and the favor is returned. Asuka comes back. Alexa Bliss comes back. They save Bianca Belair, doing the whole, like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, etc., etc., etc. And now we've got a cool trios. There we go. That's for the AEW fans. We've got a cool trios feud out of nowhere immediately. Here's this team of Bianca Belair, who's still the strong champion, just coming off of this big feud with Becky Lynch. Asuka, who can really do no wrong in anybody's eyes, and Alexa Bliss, who slowly, carefully, and gradually is coming away from all the Fiend stuff, and they're going to be the ones that stand up for the division, if you want to say that, and they're going to stand up against this new threat, which is cool on its own right, because that's going to be a pay-per-view match, guaranteed. I think we're going to get that at Clash of the Castle, if they haven't already confirmed it. But what it also does is it saves the singles match between Bayley and Bianca Belair, and it doesn't shoot that match out of the cannon right away as well. So I want to go back to Becky Lynch one more time. Literally, she left the division in the hands of Bianca Belair, but also metaphorically she leaves because of injury, which is unfortunate, which definitely wasn't planned, but she also leaves the division with another story in her absence in this new faction that Bayley has with Dakota Kai and the newly named Io Sky. There we go. Words work, right? Now, that's awesome. That is, since we're talking about SummerSlam, we're talking about SummerSlam, this week's Raw, this week's SmackDown. That's the first bookend, because that was the first thing we saw at SummerSlam, if you don't include the pre-show that didn't have any matches on it. That's the first bookend. We're going to talk about the other bookend later. So we go on, and Logan Paul defeats The Miz, and that's fine. Logan Paul, for somebody who's not a wrestler, is a pretty fucking good wrestler. I said to somebody on Twitter the other day, oh yeah, by the way, follow the Spaz Phoenix 1 account on Twitter, because the Spaz Phoenix account is in Twitter jail again. But I was talking with people, just talking about, you know, the crazy place that wrestling is in right now, and it's awesome to think, you know, we always talk about the surprises at the Royal Rumble. It's funny to think that Logan Paul, Bad Bunny, and Pat McAfee wouldn't even be surprises in the Rumble. Now, The Miz does what The Miz does. Miz is, like, criminally underrated, as always, just like another person we're going to talk about later on. Does everything he needs to do to make sure that Logan Paul looks great. Logan Paul gets the win, ends Miz with the skull-crushing finale, because Miz is always happy to make himself look like a goof for the greater good. It's fine. Logan Paul goes away, talks about how he's going to extend his contract with WWE. You're going to see lots more of me. And then he goes away for a while, which is cool. It kind of mirrors the Pat McAfee thing that we're going to talk about later on. And Miz is immediately moved into the U.S. title stuff on Raw. Now, we had the two different triple threat matches. One had Ciampa in it, one had The Miz in it, which is a carry-on from what happened at SummerSlam, because what we thought was going to become a tag team match, which was going to be The Miz and Ciampa versus Logan Paul and AJ Styles, never became a tag team match. It stayed the one-on-one match. It let Logan Paul go out there and say that he can, you know, he can act and he can hold up his end of the bargain in a one-on-one match. He doesn't have to hide within the context of a tag match, but you still did get Ciampa and AJ Styles stuff on the side. Then we got Ciampa and AJ Styles stuff on Raw. So if something else doesn't happen that I really want to happen, that does set up the possibility of a Tommaso Ciampa AJ Styles feud, which would not hurt my feelings in the slightest. The Miz is always going to go in there and do what he needs to do. He's happy to be the, you know, in the superstar versus wrestler conversation. He's happy to slot into the superstar role, be an absolute goof, make himself look like an absolute dickhead, and fall on his face. In this case, literally, for the greater good of whatever's going on in the company at that moment. I think that is awesome. And it's one of the reasons I think that The Miz is still to this day one of the most he's not The Rock, he's not John Cena, he's not Stone Cold Steve Austin, he's not Hulk Hogan, for those of you that, you know, realize that we are still allowed to like Hulk Hogan. He's not any of those guys. He's a very different, very important part of the wheel, and this match at SummerSlam absolutely proved that. And he was doing his thing so well, he was doing his celebrity thing in the ring so well, that the wrestlers that people want to see wrestle could happen on the outside, and neither took away from the other, and I think that's really, really great. One of the things at SummerSlam that we weren't really looking that forward to, because we were already looking forward to what Theory was going to do next, was Lashley versus Theory for the United States Championship. Now, I don't know how, realistically speaking, anybody could care about this, because Theory in one night had Lashley in his crosshairs, Roman Reigns in his crosshairs, and Brock Lesnar in his crosshairs. So the fact that he didn't come out of this pay-per-view absolutely dead is something in and of its own right. Leslie absolutely destroys Theory. Theory taps out pretty quickly in the, the Hurt Lock, to tell the story that he's saving himself for later on in the night. Now, what I want to go with this is not so much Bobby Lashley, but the way they treated the United States Championship in general on Raw after this, because obviously the next question is, okay, Lashley's gotten Theory out of the way, because Theory's gotten off to, you know, cause himself some trouble elsewhere. Who's going to face Lashley next? So they spent a lot of time on Raw this week focusing on the U.S. title. They did a video package on the history of the United States Championship, which I think is really funny, because people say that the video package itself served no purpose and was no good because it was voiced over by JBL. and you know, your biases are showing once again. You might want to pull your pants up. But also, JBL was the United States champion for a long time in his run, so why wouldn't he be? I'm just putting that one out there. But they did not only the video packet, and I hope they do a similar thing with the Intercontinental Championship as well. We'll talk about that later. But they set it up so that there was 2 triple threat matches and a final on the same night to crown a new #1 contender for Bobby Lashley next week. So what did we do? We featured a lot of people. We featured The Miz. We featured Ciampa. We featured Mustafa Ali. We featured, I can't even remember who else. Obviously, AJ Styles, and whoever else was in those 2 triple threat matches. So a lot of people got time. I think it's really cool that they threw Mustafa Ali in there as an immediate recognition that, yeah, this is somebody that people want to see that they haven't seen in a while. We did get the Ciampa Styles thing at the end to determine the new champion, or sorry, to determine the new challenger, I should say. And Ciampa's going to go on to face Bobby Lashley next week, or should I say tomorrow, on Raw. So what does that do? That shows that Ciampa's not quite existing in Miz's shadow, if he's the one that's potentially going to have a championship and Miz is not. But the other thing, though, because they're in his hometown tomorrow, or should I say today, should I say whatever this Monday's Raw is, they're in the hometown of one Johnny Gargano. So that does a bunch of different things. Do they just put DIY back together, which would be really weird if you just put a singles title on Ciampa? Does Gargano come out to back Bobby Lashley, which would be unexpected to say the least, but does he form DIY, still have a singles title, still leave The Miz? Does he win a title, get attacked by The Miz, and then Gargano comes out and saves him from The Miz? There's a lot of ways that you could layer in a Gargano return, and we're going to talk about that more later. But what it also does, saying it under the radar, and I'm not saying couples have to do everything together, but it would also mean that an already pretty cool looking Raw women's division would have an additional Candice LeRae, perhaps. So, not only are we pushing Ciampa, but Ciampa puts Gargano in our minds, Gargano puts Candice LeRae in our minds, and through all of this, what have we done? Miz has taken a backseat after putting over Logan Paul, and we've put a shit ton of focus back on Bobby Lashley, back on the United States Championship, and maybe making that title actually mean something. The Mysterios defeated the Judgment Day, and how did they defeat the Judgment Day? The way we all predicted they were going to defeat the Judgment Day, with the return of Edge, who's sort of like borderline Goofy Edge slash rated R superstar Edge, still coming out with a bunch of fire and a platform and fire and all this sort of like fire and brimstone type imagery, the writing in the blood on the mirror and all that kind of thing. But basically, nobody wanted Edge to be a heel. Nobody wanted Edge to be this like hard ass, like what do you want to say, like corporate ministry 2.0 guy. They wanted Edge to be Edge and basically look at this group that he created and be like, didn't quite hit the mark with that one, and he's gonna take on both of them. Do the Mysterios move on? Do they get into the tag team title picture? And we're going to talk about this in a minute, with the mixed reaction to Liv Morgan after SummerSlam. We've seen several times on social media, Rhea Ripley has reached back out to her former tag team partner, Liv Morgan, saying that there's lots of room for you in the Judgment Day. Now, that's kind of cool, because, and just in the same conversation as we're talking about Johnny Gargano probably returning, the last heel faction that had a 2 males, 2 females dynamic was indeed The Way. So, you've got you've got Gargano, Theory, Candice LeRae, maybe bring back Indy Hartwell, and you get a babyface version of The Way taking on the Judgment Day if Liv Morgan decides to go that way. Lots and lots and lots of opportunities there, but I mean, the Judgment Day still are the losingest faction ever. It was a no disqualification match, so why Rhea Ripley didn't get involved a hell of a lot more sort of boils my brain. Like I said, WWE is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. There's a lot of people on social media getting really, really weird about Rhea Ripley beating up on the Mysterios, and not in a way that they're ever going to see played out on television. Let's just say it that way. Even Rhea Ripley herself putting Dominic in the leg lock and then putting a picture of it up on Twitter and was like, hey, here's Dominic Mysterio living all of your wildest fantasies. And I'm just like, okay, if you're going to lean into it, I'm not even going to try and argue with it anymore. We did not have Rollins versus Riddle on this show, and that is absolutely fine for a bunch of reasons. We still had a brawl, which meant you had a sort of a mini segment to kind of break up the show a little bit, which was kind of nice. They are saving the match for the Clash, is at least what it looks like, because from everything I've heard, the injury to Riddle is kayfabe. Now, I do get the people that have problems with this, because you don't want to advertise a match and sort of misuse that card is subject to change thing, because it's supposed to be, if something bad happens, if somebody can't make it, if somebody is actually injured, if somebody has a real problem in their real life, etc. I understand the arguments for all that, but if Triple H came along and saw a card that was already sort of pre-made by Vince and his regime and thought, you know what, A, there's a little too much clutter on the card, and B, we do want something to make people tune in to the Cardiff show, which is going to be on at a different day, at a different time. It's a very different, unique scenario, them being over in the UK in a stadium at a time that's going to be midday for us here. So it's going to, even though it's not in Saudi Arabia, it doesn't have the political ramifications of being in Saudi Arabia, it could still be looked at as a show like that. At the very least, you can say Riddle versus Rollins is going to be a fucking fantastic match. We've moved that match over here. Please come check out the show. It's not perfect. It isn't perfect at all. I get the people that feel like, use the old cliche, we got excited about that match and we had the rug pulled up from under us. I understand that completely. If you feel that way, that's absolutely fine. But making the SummerSlam card a little bit trimmer, and having a absolute guaranteed awesome wrestling match for Clash at the Castle is better in the long run, for real. And it freed up the idea that Riddle is out with an injury and technically can't compete, etc. Freed up Seth Rollins to have an amazing match with Montez Ford that he lost, because Seth Rollins is Seth Rollins. Let's be fucking real. I'm going to talk more about the Street Profits in a second when we get to that. Pat McAfee defeated Baron Corbin and immediately went back to commentary, which, again, like Logan Paul, come in, do the awesome shit, put you with somebody who's A, a professional, B, is a superstar rather than a wrestler, C, is absolutely happy to make himself look like a goof to help the other guy look better. Logan Paul and Pat McAfee are in identical situations, and I have the same, not on the same level, but I have the same respect for Baron Corbin that I have for The Miz, in the sense of we need somebody to go out there and be an absolute fool so that Pat McAfee can destroy them, which is fine. They did a lot of funny stuff on commentary with all the replays, and Pat McAfee taking the piss out of himself was great. When he's calling matches in the ring and somebody does a spectacular move, or something, we had the Corbin versus Ricochet match on SmackDown, and that's the kind of thing that I tried to do on Saturday, but I'm not Ricochet. Like, he's willing to punch himself in the face for the purpose of his commentary, and he's willing to have some fun with his own career, in the fact that it's only his 4th match and he feels very lucky to get to be on a stage like SummerSlam. I think that's really cool. Corbin's getting laughed at by the entire locker room. Now, again, I'm sort of grasping at straws here. I really do want Corbin to do a little bit of what he did in old school NXT. And when I say old school NXT, I mean really old school NXT, when the takeovers were taking place in Full Sail. Because basically he did a whole thing where, I'm a WWE product. And he didn't say this verbatim, but the idea was put out there that he was a WWE produced talent, a superstar rather than a wrestler, and then he would go on to face your Adrian Nevilles and your Sami Zayns and your Tyson Kidds, etc. So if they're going to use Baron Corbin as a way to put over, and in this case it was Ricochet, if they're going to put him in that role for a while, so that all these wrestlers, A, that are great wrestlers that people want to see, and B, maybe haven't had the best spotlight in a while, if Corbin wants to be the superstar punching bag for all of them, it will do great things for them, but I also hope that somewhere along the way people come along and give him the credit as well. Because if he's out there making everybody else look good, then them looking good is partially thanks to him. Give him the Ziggler credit. You're not going to put a world title on him. I don't even think they're going to put the Intercontinental Championship on him at this point. But give him the credit of being punching bag to the stars, if that's what they're going to do. Like, as I said, I'm going to keep repeating myself. Miz just did it for Logan Paul. Miz did it for Bad Bunny as well. Now Corbin has done it for Pat McAfee. And in a very different way, he went out there and was a base for Ricochet to do awesome, wicked, cool, amped up Ricochet stuff, which, again, is cool in its own right. Right? So speaking of the Intercontinental Championship, however, I think I almost know what I'm doing. I almost did a transition there. Now, there was no Intercontinental Championship representation at SummerSlam. Now, somebody's got a counter, I think it's Adam Wilborn on social media, as to when the last time the Intercontinental Championship was actually defended on pay-per-view, and it's a ridiculous long time. And that's bad. But WWE doesn't have a TV title. Like, I don't think they've ever had a TV title. Somebody is immediately going to correct me down in the box below and say, oh, back in 1842, they had a little piece of tin that had TV written on it, even though they didn't know what a TV was. But they don't have a TV title. So if you want to keep, especially on Friday, where, I'm sorry, the pandemic is pretty much over, the world is back opened up again, getting people to watch on a Friday night is going to be a lot harder. If you can build a strong set of title defenses for Gunther for that Intercontinental Championship and it becomes the driving force of SmackDown, it might not be the worst thing in the world to make it a SmackDown exclusive to the point of keeping it off of pay-per-view. I want somebody to watch the pay-per-view and be like, oh, we've got a really cool Intercontinental Champion and he wasn't on the show tonight. I think he's good enough that he should be on the show tonight, but we're going to see him on SmackDown on Friday. I better tune in. Now, am I an idiot? No. Are people going to TiVo the show and watch it whenever they want to, and is that going to help the ratings? Yes or no? But at least if they're going in that direction, I hope something like that can happen. Shinsuke Nakamura has been going back and forth with Gunther and what's his new stupid made-up name? Ludwig Kaiser. He won the chance on Friday to face Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship next Friday, and I don't really have much to say to that, other than it's going to be a really fun match. I hope we get a little bit more Walter out of Gunther now that we're in the Triple H era, and Shinsuke Nakamura seems to be having fun doing what he's doing, so you don't really have to mess with him too much. WWE had a show. There was a tag team title match, so can you guess who was in it? Can you guess who was in it? It was the Usos and the Street Profits, with Double J as the special guest referee, which was right in your face and also happening in the background at the same time, which was kind of weird. I don't really want to go with that too much, but the Bloodline stays strong. They defeat the Street Profits. There's a little bit of tension between the Street Profits, if you want to say that. Bloodline has all the belts. Roman has all the belts. We're going to talk about Roman in a second. As I said, Ford took on Seth Rollins on Raw after they went to do a rock, paper, scissors, and then he shoved his partner out of the way for the opportunity. They are building towards the breakup of the Street Profits, and I'm going to say what I've always said. I'm going to say that when they break up this tag team and Montez Ford goes on a monster singles run, which I'm sure he will, and that's fine. I mean, look at who he's married to. He needs something good in his life. Angelo Dawkins needs to be taken care of in some kind of way, and I don't just mean like being the, oh my god, we broke up as a tag team and I'm the bigger guy, so I need to be the heel. Ford is going to go off and do something. Now, if he gets himself into the United States Championship picture, and we get, say Ciampa wins the title off of Lashley this weekend, and we go on to have something like Ciampa versus Ford, now you can do a couple of things with that. If you don't break up the Street Profits, that can lead to a DIY versus the Street Profits feud, and if it stays a singles match, I'm sorry, Montez Ford versus Tommaso Ciampa for the United States Championship is gonna put a few eyes on the United States Championship, is it not? And now the story becomes, who is left to face the Usos? Do we go back to the New Day for the 100th time? No, because I really do think that they moved them on to the Street Profits just because people were getting so sick of Usos versus New Day. You could do the Mysterios again, you could do the Alpha Academy, and they're not. The Alpha Academy are a lot of fun. Chad Gable is another one that I would love to see in that singles realm, but they're not going to beat the Usos. Not as well built as the Usos and the Bloodline are. You might not like you might not like Vince, and you might not like, you know, you might love the fact that he got screwed out of his job, but one of the things that he actually built properly was the validity of the members of the Bloodline. So you got to do something cool. Now here is my thing. Here's my two shots, and I don't think either of them are really going to happen. Owens has been off TV for a couple of weeks, and the rumor is that he's being purposely kept off TV while they cook up some fantastic creative for him. What I want, if we're going to get something, I want the Usos to finally get sick of Sami Zayn, turn on him, say, look, we've been leading you along, you're a fucking idiot, what made you think you were going to be part of the Bloodline, you're not the honorary anything, and you know, slam the door in his face, which turns him back to Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn can be an annoying heel team that goes after other heels, because if anybody can make it work, it's them, and you get Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens versus the Usos at some big pay-per-view. Failing that, I'll go back to what we were talking about earlier and the return of Johnny Gargano. You give me DIY versus the Usos, and I'm going to be a happy, happy, happy guy. Tell me down in the box below. Do you want it to be Owen Zayn? Am I an idiot for thinking that that's a good enough thing to happen? DIY, that's going to hinge largely on whether Johnny Gargano comes back, or is there a team that exists currently that you think they can build up to the level that they have successfully built the Usos? I don't know, it's an interesting thing, because the door is kind of swung open right now, and you never know who could walk through it. It's almost like a forbidden door has been opened. Liv Morgan defeated Ronda Rousey. Kind of. I don't think this was the best. I'll agree with the people out there that think like this was a fuck finish. They, judging by what happened on SmackDown, with her first sort of post-match promo, the fans that love her are already chanting "you tapped out" at her, because there's a confusion, because there was a pinfall, but the tapping out happened at the same time, and Ronda says, well, I let her pin me because I felt her tap out against my back, and Liv says, well, I heard the 3 count, so that's why I was able to tap out, just to save myself, and she's out there in a cast. Now, I don't think it's the greatest thing in the world that we have somebody with an injured arm angle while you've just sent your other former champion on Raw out with a legitimate arm injury. Like, that's a bit of unfortunate happenstance. But it is what it is. So we've got a couple cool things here. We need to keep Liv babyface, because the crowd did what Becky Lynch said in a promo a couple years ago. It's like, yeah, these people love you. You're the new underdog. As soon as you get that title, they're gonna hate you. And it is kind of funny to watch like a fictional promo come true, but I really don't want it, because Liv winning that at the other pay-per-view was genuinely a happy moment. Yeah, she did it off of Money in the Bank, but like, it's Ronda Rousey. How else was she gonna do it? So that being said, we've fixed up a couple of things. We need to work on Liv Morgan as a babyface, because we might have put a crack in that. Ronda Rousey going back to being heel is awesome. Kind of mirrors Becky Lynch turning face on Raw. Flashing well forward, we can get babyface Becky versus heel Ronda Rousey at Survivor Series or SummerSlam, or WrestleMania, I should say. Even if they square up against each other at the Rumble and eliminate each other, and then they just use that. Like, Becky and Ronda at this point, I don't even think you need a belt involved. I mean, it would be very deserving if a belt was involved, but Becky Ronda, because we've wanted it for so long, because yes, a couple years ago they ruined it by putting Charlotte Flair in it. How dare she be white and blonde and successful? Yes, I get it. I kind of agree, but not really. Yes, we want the Ronda-Becky one-on-one match, and we've never gotten it. So yes, absolutely do that. Ronda's a heel. She's going to go away for a bit because she's kayfabe suspended. Becky Lynch is a babyface. She's going to go away for a minute because she's shoot injured. The way these two mirror each other is actually kind of outstanding, even though you don't want to celebrate somebody being legitimately injured. In the meantime, while Ronda is suspended, we needed a new number one contender, so we had a number one contenders gauntlet match, and this served so many purposes. This served so many purposes. Now, you guys know for a while now, I've hated the underuse of Sonya Deville. Now, I always have to say it, Sonya Deville went away from wrestling because terrible shit happened to her in real life. I'm not going to tell somebody when they're ready to come back and wrestle. But the manager's role that they put her in, where they just made her like a Karen manager type person, wasn't great. So now that you see her actually stepping up to the champion, you know, I'm zooming in on that belt. I've got my eyes on it type thing. I'm going to win this gauntlet match, and away we go. We're off to the races. She came out to cut a promo on the champion before the match started. So that little bit of focus that Sonya Deville doesn't really get most of the time, because when she's a manager, I'm sorry, if she's cutting a promo on somebody else as the general manager of the show, the focus is on that other person. To see some focus actually on Sonya Deville was fucking nice and well overdue, in my opinion. Now, the gauntlet itself was awesome because you got a spotlight on Sonya, who's incredibly underrated. Spotlight on my girl Shotzi, who's incredibly underrated. Raquel Rodriguez is obviously a current project of theirs, so she got to destroy a bunch of people. And the last person in, and the winner, was somebody who we've known should be in the title picture for a hell of a long time. Not only getting a title shot, not only getting a title shot at a pay-per-view, but getting a shot at title shot at an international payper-view in front of a stadium crowd, is Shayna Baszler. Shayna Baszler's gonna probably destroy Liv Morgan, which kind of makes me sad, but Shayna Baszler getting back and being presented the way she should be, as a person that can just take you apart piece by piece and kind of enjoy doing it, is fucking awesome. It's a gauntlet, so it's actually several matches put together. But in one match, how many people did you help? And Liv Morgan sitting there on commentary, you've got a person that can break limbs and a champion with a hurt limb. It's not that hard. Also on SmackDown, we got the announcement that the women's tag titles that were abandoned by their former holders, and therefore they should never touch them again, the tournament that was promised a while ago under Vince is now being actually realized under Triple H, and it starts on Monday. So, this tournament should end with those titles going on the shoulders of Dakota Kai and Io Sky. It just should. But also, you kind of need to use this tournament to bring up Toxic Attraction from NXT. You really versus heel feud of who's the baddest women's faction on Raw, let's just say it happens on Raw, between Bayley's new group and Toxic Attraction would be fucking great. And you know what, at the same time, for me, watching it all happen on Twitter, it would piss off all the right people, and I would be okay with that. Because here's the thing as well, is you've got this sort of thrown together group of Bianca Belair, Asuka, and Alexa Bliss. You could have a three-way, 3-on-3-on-3 elimination match at Survivor Series with these three groups of three. Y'all like factions, right? Y'all like factions. Let's fucking go. In the main event, it's Roman and Lesnar again. Oh my god, how many more times do we have to watch this? It's so terrible. You know, last man standing matches are so fucking boring. Until somebody comes out with a tractor and lifts up the fucking ring. Theory is the new Miz, is my thought on this. And what I mean by that is, we all remember when Miz was getting ready to face John Cena at WrestleMania, which should have been his ticket to stardom. Still going to say that. But it was Miz trying to stay relevant in a conversation that was really about John Cena and The Rock. So now you've got Theory, who's trying to be an agitator in a war between Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. So he ends up looking like a goof pretty fucking quick. All of it was good. All of it was fun. They absolutely buried, literally, Brock Lesnar under all the rubble, and then Roman Reigns had his pose at the top of Pride Rock moment as the referee counted to 10. Really, really cool. If you watch on social media, you see Brock Lesnar climbing the tilted ring to pose and tip his hat to the fans. So, don't know what he's doing next. We all know that on SmackDown, he sort of had that "if Vince is gone, I'm gone" moment, and I don't blame him. Here's the thing. I'm going to have a little side tangent here for a second. A lot of people, when certain ladies walked out of the company, there was a bunch of other wrestlers that are, I'm so behind them, they've helped me out so much, and I need to show them the respect that way. Well, do you not think that Brock Lesnar looks at Vince that way? Now, Brock Lesnar can go to Vince and say, you're going to give me this much money, and smile about it. But at the same time, Brock Lesnar is a creation of Vince McMahon's. So if he wants to show that same respect to Vince, I don't exactly think that's the worst thing in the world. I would still like to see him on my TV screen. I would love to see him take on Braun Breaker one day because I think it would be hilarious. But yeah, that being set aside, we don't know where Brock Lesnar's going next, but he did climb the tilted ring, to the highest point you possibly could, tipped his hat to the Tennessee crowd, and was on his way. And the cool thing about this was because they've been promoting Clash at the Castle for as long as they've been promoting SummerSlam. They already had Roman Reigns' next challenger out there in the works. So it's all just boring puzzle pieces. We're going to go over to the UK, so let's pick a UK guy. Drew will fill that role. It's fine. Roman Reigns can just go in there and smack Drew around, and it'll be very by the numbers. Except, that was a really lame lead up. I'm sorry. Except Roman Reigns came out to address Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre came out to cut off Roman Reigns from doing a Roman Reigns diatribe, which is kind of fine. He called him the tribal queef, which was pretty low-hanging fruit, but that's okay. And he didn't get to do anything because the lights went dark and the familiar music played, and then Scarlett was posed on the rampway, and Killer Cross with hair came out and beat the absolute living fuck out of Drew McIntyre to close out SmackDown, while Scarlett brought the hourglass and placed it down in front of Roman Reigns. I popped huge. Apparently, this had been in the news. This had been in the rumor mill. I am so glad that I missed that news and I missed that rumor mill, because when his music hit, I'm not going to lie, for a split second, because we haven't seen him in a while, I didn't know what the music was until it went to the screen and until we saw Scarlett in the entranceway, and I was like, wait a minute, is this? Oh, fuck, it is. Yes, get in. And he didn't go back to, people are saying the gimp outfit and the demolition mask. They didn't even make him shave his head back to the way it was in WWE. It was just, this is the current 2022 control your narrative version of Killer Cross. I mean, they're still calling him KARRION Kross, which is fine. It's how I was introduced to him. This is a very, very cool scenario, because now you do get into the boring, lazy news end of it, where you hear that USA Network wants the titles to be split again because they want a champion on their show and Roman Reigns is a part-timer, blah, 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 blah. So, I'm going to go with what everybody else has said on Twitter. Do what you did. Do the triple threat match. Remember the triple threat match from back in the day that was for the Intercontinental and the European Championship, and one falls for one title, the other falls for the other title? Here's the thing. Here's what you do. In my opinion, anyways. Here's what you do. You set up Drew versus KARRION Kross versus Roman Reigns. Triple threat, 2 titles on the line. Roman wins... Fuck, hold on a second. Let me get my thoughts together. Roman keeps his Universal Championship because that's the one that he's held for almost 700 days. You don't want to break up that continuity because that's a really cool thing to throw into a promo. It's a really cool bunch of words to stick in Paul Heyman's mouth. KARRION Kross not only wins the WWE Championship, takes it over to Raw, and sort of is a disruptor on Raw, because it would be another swerve, because he made his return on SmackDown only to win the Raw title and show up on Raw and sort of rule over Raw a little bit, because who on Raw is going to be a world champion right now? Might as well be a brand new guy, give KARRION Kross that kick up the butt. Now here's what you do, and here's where you kind of feel bad for Drew McIntyre, but hear me out. What you do, you have KARRION Kross pin Drew, because it's a triple threat match, you have KARRION Kross pin Drew McIntyre to win the WWE Championship. You have Roman Reigns pin Drew McIntyre to win it, retain his Universal Championship. Does it bury Drew a little bit? Yes, it does. But right now, at the current moment, I don't want Drew McIntyre to be the one that dethrones Roman Reigns. And technically, if you do this, then KARRION Kross technically hasn't dethroned Roman Reigns. He's done it by sort of scheming means a little bit. And what it does is it saves for Survivor Series, champion versus champion. It's the only night of the year where all the brands come together and fight each other. It preserves Roman Reigns versus KARRION Kross because neither one has pinned the other one, and it's still a fresh match. I don't know that all that is going to happen. I think that's how it should happen. You guys can tell me down in the box below what you think about that. But this is the other bookend. I started off this week sort of saying, if you look at it as a week, the week started at the beginning of SummerSlam with the return of Bayley and her group, and it ended at the end of SmackDown with the return of KARRION Kross and SCARLETT. Those are some pretty nice bookends, and they did some cool shit in the middle as well. Let's run it down. We got Kross back, we got SCARLETT back, we got Bayley and her whole faction. They've sort of fixed Edge. They've got babyface Becky Lynch and heel Ronda Rousey. They did a gauntlet match which put a little bit of shine on Sonya and Shotzi and gave Baszler the spotlight that she finally deserves. And we move on to next week. Now, here's where I want to get you guys involved if you don't mind. What's going on for next week? Are we getting this push for Owens? Is he potentially working with Sami Zayn again? Is he maybe turning face? Is he getting a push towards maybe KARRION Kross brings a title over to Raw and you get Kevin Owens versus KARRION Kross? Maybe. Is Gargano returning? That's the big question for this Monday Night Raw. We're starting off the Women's Tag Team Tournament. There's two people that deserve to not be in it, and as long as they're not in it, I'll be a happy guy. Does Ciampa become the United States Champion? Does he pick up his first bit of gold on the main roster? What are we going to do with Team Bayley and Team Bianca? That's going to be fun. On Friday, we're going to be building more towards Liv versus Shayna. Are we, with the return of Dakota Kai, are we going to get the return of Tegan Nox as well, or Nixon Newell as she's known now? That's one that's just kind of been floating around in the ether, but we know that she and Dakota Kai are quite close. That's something you could put in thing. And what I'm going to put in here, what I'm always going to throw in at the end, there's one thing that could solidify this entire Triple H regime as being absolutely perfect. And when you can absolutely say that the WWE has been saved, there's one more person that needs to come back. And it's the fucking Fiend. I've been Spaz, your YWC Reality Check. Subscribe up there, talk down there, start a conversation. Keep all these conversations going. Don't be a stranger. I will talk to each and every last one of you later, but for right now, I am tagging out. Bye, guys.